Hello, everyone, and thanks for joining us today. Today, we've got something a bit special. I'm joined by ex-pro road rider Sam Williams, who's talking me through the cycling race calendar for the year. We thought it was a good idea to help people new to the sport understand how all the races relate to each other and give some key races to look out for this year. There are many cyclists out there who ride their bikes, watch the Tour de France, but probably don't know much about the rest of the racing schedule available. So we thought that a series of shows acting as guides to road racing would really help people get the most out of the plethora of racing that is there. This is especially important now that to actually watch it, you're going to have to make a not insignificant investment to TNT Sports. So settle in for this informative talk with Sam, and I'll see you at the end.
Sometimes when you're really involved in the sport, you forget, and I'm guilty of this, that there's a lot of people that don't have a clue. And actually
Yeah,
just starting with the basics, people
yeah.
don't know much about cycling outside of the Tour de France and stuff. So I think this is a really good idea.
Hi, Sam. How are you?
Hiya, mate. Yeah, I'm doing well, thank you. How are you?
I'm very well.
How's your week going?
It's going all right. I'm busy.
It's
I'm not.
nice to be on the receiving end of a call. Don't normally get this. I don't normally get many opportunities like this. That's quite nice.
Oh, it should be fun. Okay, so well, I mean, I guess we should start with you introducing yourself. Really, who are you, and why should I listen to you?
Yeah, well, so my name's Sam Williams. I'm a cycling coach at Dutchy Coaching, and I'm an ex-professional cyclist. I was a professional cyclist for 6 years, racing at domestic level in the UK and also at Pro-Continental level, which basically means there's pretty much three divisions in the world of professional cycling. You have your domestic levels, which is kind of like championship football, I guess, kind of how I like to describe it. And then pro continental level is you're in the Premiership, but you're kind of the bottom half of football teams. And then you have the World Tour, which is the top levels. That's your Ineos and your Jumbo Vismas and all this like the big budget teams. So I raced at the second division, still racing against the guys doing the Tour de France, and that was great before I started my coaching career, which is what I'm doing now, and I love it.
Excellent, great. Okay, perfect. So you're well placed to teach us about this. Is
Yeah.
there within the sort of Pro Continental and World Tour teams in events? Will there be any crossover, or are they completely separate sort of timetables for the year?
Oh no, they're very much overlapping. You're kind of racing each other all the time. It's just those I was doing World Tour races. It just gets to the point when you're doing those top races like the Tour de France, or the Giro d'Italia or the Vuelta a España. In those races, only the national Pro Continental teams, so the national second division teams, can race those races unless you get an invite. Um,
Okay.
so that's why you tend to see a lot of French teams. They're only Pro Continental, even though they're racing at the top level, because they can get an invite into the Tour de France much easier than a foreign Pro Continental team. So that's why you don't see many
Okay.
French World Tour teams. Um,
Okay. So well, then,
but yeah,
does that go on to other countries? So like the Tour Down Under, will that be more densely populated with Australian
yeah,
teams?
pretty
Okay.
much. Pretty much, you see you see a general trend across all races, really, where where it's based. You'll see the local teams doing those races because of exposure for sponsors and stuff like that. So a lot more Italians are doing the Italian races and the Grand Tours there. And the same in Spain. And yeah, if you're racing in Norway, there'll be a lot of Norwegian teams, etc.
Okay. There is always throughout the year there is cycling on TV. So
Mm.
there doesn't seem to the casual observer, there doesn't necessarily seem to be like a season or an off, certainly an off season for the riders. So focusing on sort of the Grand Tour teams, what sort of what would the majority of their riders look like? What would their timetable look like for a year? When do they get to eat as much pizza as possible? When do they need to start focusing on what they're doing?
Well, actually, the world of cycling in the past decade has changed drastically. The cycling season is getting much longer. The World Tour guys have already been starting. They've already been racing since January. A lot of them in the Tour Down Under in Australia, and they'll go right on now all the way into October for the final races. The Tour of Lombardia is in October now. So whereas before, the cycling season for a lot of people would kind of start late February, March, and you'd kind of be done by September. Now it's just getting drawn out more, and I think just how globalized the sport is now, you kind of the racing season follows the sun really. So at the moment they've just been racing in Australia. There a lot of racing in the Middle East at the moment, Spain, and then as you get further into summer, you goes into more Northern Europe, and it kind of follows that. So actually, and the sport in general is just getting so much more professional now that a lot of riders aren't having that much of an off season. They can't go on a month 6 week bender where you just eat as much food and drink as much beer as you can. That those kind of days are gone. So yeah, there's not much downtime anymore.
So does it get split up? So um will the same group in a team race most races, or will they cherry pick them and to allow some rider, even if the team's represented every race, to allow some riders a bit of downtime?
Yeah. So
Because you
the
can't
teams are
sustain flat out
no,
all the way through the year,
yeah.
can you?
The teams are huge. Usually, you're looking if you're a professional rider racing on the World Tour, Pro-Continental, you're looking at probably doing about anywhere from 70 to 100 plus race days spread out across the year.
Yeah.
And an average cycling team will probably be somewhere between 22 to 30 riders. So you'll, pick a group of 6 to 8 guys going and doing a race wherever, and there'll be another team racing in another place doing another race. There's just the depth in the racing calendar is the fact that you could be racing every week and a team could be doing 2 or 3 races at the same time.
Okay.
So yeah, you won't be doing every single race if you're a pro rider. You'll be working with your coach and the director of sportif, the managers, and you'll be kind of organizing your calendar of where your peak race is going to be, what races you're going to be using for conditioning leading up until those races. And you'll be kind of looking to have maybe 2 or 3 priority top goals in the season.
Okay. So peaking sort of 3 times in the year.
Yeah, that would be ideal.
Okay.
Obviously, then you've got to
Okay.
factor in crashes, illnesses, all the other stuff
Yeah.
that could be put spanners in the works.
Okay. So um from the point of this is to help those that know about the Tour de France but don't know about anything else. So let's start
Mm.
with the Tour de France. Um, every rider wants to race that, I assume. So um, that's probably a safe assumption. So
Yeah.
in the team, that's made quite. I assume it's made quite early on the decision in the season of who's racing the Tour de France, and then you work off that, do you?
Yes, yeah. So very much early in the first team camps, which will be in November and December, you're outlaying your priority riders for the Tour de France. There'll be some backup riders, and then you'll be tailoring your whole racing program for the build up for the Tour de France. Um,
Okay.
at the same time, there'll be other riders focusing on the Giro d'Italia. Uh, Usually, the younger guys are the ones that focus on the Vuelta a España. It's kind of their first Grand Tour, which is later on in the season,
Yeah.
and then there'll be a completely different part of the team that are focusing on the classics, which is kind of March to May.
Okay. And are they also called the monuments, or
So
are they
there's
different?
5. No, there some of the yeah. So you got the Tour of Flanders and Paris-Roubaix, which is a monument. There's 5 monuments throughout the year. You have Milan San Remo as well, and you have Tour of Lombardia at the end, and there's one I'm forgetting. But yeah, there's 5 in total, and they're kind of like the big races of the year of a
Yeah.
one day race.
Okay. Okay. Fine. So um, Tour de France is going to have every team's best hitters.
Yeah.
Is the Giro d'Italia the sort of the second one down from that? Would we say?
I would say so in terms of grand tours for sure, and in terms of exposure for sponsors, publicity. Yeah, I would say that as well as kind of the classics like your Paris-Roubaix, Flanders, um, and a handful of others. But yeah,
Yeah.
in terms of grand tours, it kind of I would say it goes Tour de France, Giro d'Italia, and then Vuelta a España.
Yeah. And it's not out of reach for most riders to do both of those, is it?
Now, no, it used to be kind of you're focusing on one and then you maybe do another one for helping the team, but very much so now, as it's been shown over the last uh few years with Tadej Pogacar, like you just go and race them all
Yeah.
and win them all. It's crazy.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay.
Um,
Uh, yeah. Okay. So assuming you've got a nice balance in the grand tours and you know what you're doing, what of the spring classics or the sort of the second tier, let's before we get to the spring classics then, the sort of the second tier races, um uh uh Paris, Paris Nice, for that's like a
Pyrenees.
multi-stage day, isn't it,
Yeah.
race, and this Tour of Switzerland or UAE Tour. What are the next ones down that teams or individuals would necessarily want to focus on?
Um, well, there's quite a few. I mean, the Volta Catalunya is a really good one. You have the Tour de Basque Country. There's a lot of shorter race days in France and Belgium around that time. Guys that are busy doing the classics will also be doing some mini stage races. And so yeah, you've got a lot of racing in Spain as well. Like yeah, the Volta Catalunya, Tour of Valencia. And then as you're getting close to the Tour de France, you've got the Criterium de Dauphiné, which is the kind of
Yeah.
mini Tour de France, which the guys who go well in the Criterium de Dauphiné are, your best bet for winning the Tour de France usually.
So, um, those races, are they usually picked based on, because there's so many of them around similar sort of times? Are they picked based on what's going to suit their training more, or are there things like the Criterium du Dauphiné that you actually want to put a mark in the ground and say, "I'm here, I'm going well"?
Definitely so because Criterium Dauphiné is so close to the Tour de France. You're hitting a peak by then, really. So that your Criterium du Dauphiné is your last hit out before you go into a taper, and you're just kind of maintaining condition going into the Tour de France.
Okay.
So that you what the routes for the tours and all these grand tours get released um, over a year in advance, and what the team will be doing is looking at the profiles of these races, what's offering, whether it's team time trials, individual time trials, how many what the Queen stage is looking like, which is the biggest day of climbing,
Yeah.
and changing their training or manipulating the training around that to suit the demands of the Tour de France if you're focusing for that. A
Okay.
lot
Great.
sorry, a lot of guys as well will be doing a lot of recons as well. So throughout the season leading up to the Tour de France, for example, there'll be like key stages which the team will highlight, and they'll go and train on that stage, or parts of that stage, which will be really
Okay.
important.
What do some teams like to keep it under the radar and not enter particular riders in certain events just to let them keep training on their own, or and keep them safe from crashes, or do you not avoid things like that?
There's definitely an element like that of that. I think safety and avoiding crashes, but you can never go as hard as you can in training like you can with a number pinned on your back. So race form, getting race days in your legs is essential for all riders.
Yeah.
So there'll be a lot of guys going into races that are just there to kind of get some speed in their legs and not necessarily do much, and that will be for condition, um, building up condition for a big race. And some people will look at that like, oh, maybe he or she's not going very well, but actually it's more of just like you said, staying safe and
Preparing.
also just getting some
Yeah.
speed in the legs, getting some race days in the legs.
Okay. So not taking the risks that you'll need to be taking in the
Yeah,
bigger
there'll be an
events.
element of
Yeah.
that in some races. Yeah.
Cool. Okay. Let me share my screen a second. This is quite a nice calendar with a number of the races on. So we've missed the Tour Down Unders. That's been
Yeah, that's been and
um,
gone.
No, so Tour of Valencia starts today,
Yeah,
and then UAE Tour, Ruta del Sol, not one I've heard of. Gran Camino. This is quite a bit in the sunshine. Nice, as you said, chasing the
yeah,
sun around the country.
yeah. A lot
Um,
in Spain at the
and
moment.
and then we get into Belgium, which is cold. So what are these races? We're coming into March. They're not chasing the sunshine. These are a lot of 1 day races.
These are what we call the classics and the semi-classics. So you've got
Okay,
the classics, you've got the classic races, which are Gent-Wevelgem, Paris-Roubaix, Tour of Flanders, and then Brabantse Pijl, and you've got the other semi-classics, which are Omloop Het Nieuwsblad Kuurne, Brussels Kuurne. The races at the beginning are kind of the semi-classics, which are getting riders conditioned for the bigger classics to come, which is usually in April. So yeah, your Tour de France, your Paris-Roubaix, and you have
okay,
you have those races which are flat and on the cobblestones and which suit much bigger, heftier riders, which were the races that I like to do. And then you have the hillier races at the towards the end of April, going into May, where you have the Amstel Gold Race, the Flèche Wallonne, which is on the east part of Belgium, usually, and in France, where it's much hillier in the Ardennes, and really short, hard, steep climbs, which suit people like Alaphilippe and Stevie Williams,
okay,
a good mate of mine and a British rider who's really coming through the ranks and winning some good races over there.
okay. And so, which out of do individual riders have personal preference? Obviously, they will do on based on sort of riding style, but is there um, a classic that without doubt, like the Tour de France, everyone wants to win that one?
Yeah, and that'll be 100% Paris-Roubaix and Tour of Flanders, especially so
Okay,
Paris-Roubaix. Paris-Roubaix is kind of one of these races that if you complete it, you've done well. If
okay.
you can kind of boast that if you've got round Paris-Roubaix, that's a win for a lot of people.
Because of the cobblestones.
Yeah, because of the cobblestones and just how long it is. It's a crazy amount of kilometers you cover on cobblestones. And just with the weather, sometimes it's just they call it the hell of the north.
So
So
13th of April.
that's definitely one everyone should tune in and watch. Yeah, it's
Yeah.
brilliant. My favorite race of the
Uh,
year.
really? Just
Yeah,
because
for
it's a bit of
sure.
a lottery because of mechanicals and things.
Yeah, exactly. You could be on the best form of your life, but you're stuck behind crashes, and yeah, you mechanicals, punctures, the worst timings as well. It's something, it's a lot of stuff out of your control, and it makes it really exciting racing to watch.
Okay. And then Paris-Nice, that's a big one as well, isn't it?
Yeah, Paris Nice is kind of one of the bit of first big stage races in Europe, and that can be usually quite a difficult time in terms of weather
Mhm.
and stuff, and that's usually a good indicator of guys that are people to watch out for this season
Okay.
in terms of stage racing.
Okay. I'm just working through
And then
Strada Bianchi. There's lots of white. That's going over white gravel, isn't it? Strada
yeah,
Bianchi.
Strada Bianchi's a great race as well. So that's in northern Italy and
Yeah.
brilliant. Just yeah, white tracks, gravel, lot of racing on the gravel, and similar to the Tour de Flanders and Paris-Roubaix, where it's just a lot of chaos, bodies everywhere, and very chaotic.
And a good advert for Italy as well. It looks beautiful shots
Yeah,
of if it's dry,
stunning.
what lots of white
Kind of
powder
around
flying up
Tuscany.
behind everyone.
Exactly. Yeah, yeah, beautiful.
Okay. And then Milan San Remo, that's really, really long, isn't it?
That's the longest race, 1 day race of the calendar of the whole
Yeah.
season, and that's the first monument of the year, and that's kind of one for the history books if you get a win there.
Okay.
A lot of teams put a lot of resources into winning Milan San Remo.
Okay. So let's we'll finish by today then by focusing on that. That's gonna be the first monument to look for. Uh what why is it so difficult? Is it just because it's long or how which teams win it? Which ride types of riders win it?
Um, so it usually comes down to a reduced bunch sprint, um, just because you have the climb at the end, which is the Poggio,
Would you?
which is the final climb, and that is where teams will try and reduce the bunch and get rid of sprinters. The teams that don't have the best sprinters of the day, they will try and dispatch the sprinters by going really, really hard up that climb. It's not very long. I think it's like 4K or something like that. So it's not really long enough to, create the damage that's needed to really dispatch a lot of sprinters. And that's why usually it comes back together on the descent, and it comes
Yeah.
down to a reduced bunch sprint. And yeah, the sprints, or there's sometimes, where I think it was Jasper Stuyven in like 2021, he got away, and he managed to stay away and win it solo by just a bit. But usually it comes down to a few of the main sprinters sprinting for the line, like your Jasper Stuyven. He won it last year. No, Philipsen, sorry.
Yeah.
Jasper Philipsen.
Um, yeah. Okay. And Alaphilippe won it a couple of years ago, attacking off the top of the Poggio, I
Yeah,
think,
yeah,
quite
yeah. It's brilliant,
spectacularly.
brilliant, brilliant, brilliant racing. It's
Yeah.
creme de la creme of racing, really.
And in the 200 odd kilometers leading up to the end, are they trying to hammer each other? Will there be teams that are trying to just destroy the rest of the pack by going as hard as they can, or is it fairly civilized?
It's very, very, very controlled racing. A lot of things which you, in terms of World Tour and pro cycling, which you don't necessarily see in TV coverage, is that a lot of the time you're riding pretty steady. Um, if you're the higher up you go in the pro ranks, and the bigger the races are, the more controlled it is. So what I mean by that is, there'll be a breakaway that's formed that goes up the road, and then the main teams are controlling that breakaway, keeping it at a nice distance, not short enough, not bringing the gap down short enough that riders can try and jump across,
Okay,
but also not letting it long enough, so the gap big enough, so it's much harder to control towards the end. So it's keeping it at that nice distance, and yeah, a lot of the time you're just cruising, and it's very easy going until the kind of you hit the last 20-30 kilometers, which is when it all goes to chaos, and especially in Milan San Remo. And that's a bit of criticism of Milan San Remo, that it's a bit unnecessary to be that long anymore. It's very old school, but because it's a
yeah.
monument, it's got so much heritage and everything like that. Of course, people want to keep it like that as the longest race of the
Okay,
season.
so actually, a lot of people, a lot of the riders will be getting towards the end still relatively fresh. It's just been a
Yeah,
light,
those
a
main
good ride.
sprinters that we were talking about, they wouldn't have put their nose in the wind all day, and they would just be
Okay,
topping up with food and energy drinks, and just trying to save their legs and keep their powder dry as much as they can.
perfect. And then you mentioned the sort of a group going off the front. That happens every day in every race.
Not
Um,
usually, yes, yeah. Sometimes not so much. If there's a lot of wind as well, it can be quite cagey,
okay,
and then it needs to be the right formation of riders as well. Especially if you're like deep into a stage race, you've got your director sportif in your ear telling you like who's going up the road. No, that guy's a threat to GC.
you need
We
to
need to
rein him
bring him
in.
back. We need to rein it in, and it's like yeah, and sometimes it can not go for like 50, 60 kilometers, and then it just never goes. But usually, yeah, it does. Breakaway does go away.
Does it, apart from getting the shirt seen on TV and pleasing the sponsors, does it
Yeah,
serve a sort of purpose in terms of the racing of having a pod of maybe 5 or 10 people out a few
definitely.
minutes ahead?
Yeah, if you're looking at kind of the race profile of that day of that stage, if you've got a guy in the breakaway, we call them like a satellite rider, and they can be
Yeah.
useful for later on in the stage. Obviously, it could come down that the break stays away, and they've got a chance, and that always is a possibility. That the breakaway could stay away. The guys behind really do miscalculate, and there's not enough cohesion between teams, and they don't bring it back. So you've always got a chance of winning if you're in the breakaway, even though a lot of times it's very, very small. But also, yeah, if you're a satellite rider, if there's the second half of the stage is very mountainous and there's a lot of climbing. If you've got a guy up the roads, then he can gradually come back and meet the main guy from your team, the team leader, and help him pace him up the climb towards the end.
Okay.
So that's why a lot of guys put guys up the road early on in the race.
Okay. So like a safety net to come back and help out if they need
Yeah.
to.
Yeah, exactly.
And I assume most teams want to have someone in that breakaway each day.
Yes, unless you're the leading the race. If you've got the yellow jersey or the leader's jersey, you're most likely in charge of the pressure is put on you to control the break of the day, the breakaway. So you're normally putting all of your riders on the front, controlling the breakaway. So you don't normally go up the road. And it's the same if you're a sprinting team, then you usually don't put a guy up in the breakaway. You're keeping all your riders together to look after the sprinter, and it's usually the guys that don't have the best chance of winning that on that day, that stage, that will try and put a guy up the road in the breakaway.
Just a shot to nothing. Might as well give it a go.
Yeah, and like you said, TV exposure is great. Sponsors are happy, and in the world of cycling, you got to keep your sponsors happy.
Yeah. True story.
Yeah.
Right. Okay, Sam. Thanks very much. That's been really useful.
My pleasure.
Let's do this again. Closer
Yeah,
to bigger
would love
races.
to talk more about this. Yeah, like for me, the classics are the most exciting part of the season, and that like you showed there usually kicks off in March, and it's just so much racing happening then. You can just watch something every week, so that's a good time to tune in.
Okay, so let's get together closer to the time, and we'll know who's still riding, who hasn't crashed yet, and who we can expect to see in the races, and maybe talk about the actual individuals more specifically.
For sure. Yeah, that sounds like great. That sounds like a great idea.
That was great to get a bit of basic insight from Sam into this year's races, and I'm grateful to him for taking some time away from being an excellent coach at the exceptional Dutchy Coaching. And if you want to know more about the coaching offered by Dutchy, then there is a link in the description. I've also included a link to the calendar I was showing during the video if you want to take a more in-depth look at that. We will have more shows throughout the year where we will dive into particular races or groups of races in more detail. So if there is anything you would particularly like us to cover, then just pop it in the comments below. Thanks for watching.